Sorry, you're recording. I'll be serious now. For YouTube.
So, I think I want to start with where like I'm actually most curious, which is like, is there like, is there a song or something you've been most intrigued by lately, or an album?
Oh, yes, yes, probably so. But I picked up this book at the library. Well, the title is it's translated from French into German, but whatever. The title is like The Music of Egypt. And I haven't read it, like anything from the book, but it has a CD. And the front, I'll turn on somehow. And I was curious about the very first track on the CD because, well, I'll just play it for a second.
لا 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 ليل يا ليل ليلنا الله لا ليل لا 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 ليل يا ليلة يا ليلة في هواك تغدم يا ليل أشكرك شكر بلا ندم بعدد. But I was mostly struck by that because like it reminded me so much of American like work songs, you know? It sounded like something from kind of an American well, I can imagine like a slave plantation song, you know?
Totally.
But the reason I found that interesting is because it's from Egypt, and like the American slaves didn't come from Egypt, you know what I mean? They came from West Africa. So this is like music of an Arabic background, and it's also like traditional music of rural Egyptians. So I found it really curious, like the extreme similarity that doesn't seem to have an obvious historical link, you know? It's not like an obvious thing where you could say like, well, this is like some folk song from Senegal, you know, where then it like becomes obvious, you know? And I heard some other stuff like that recently. I heard some other track from Niger, like, but this is like North African Arabic speaking people. I mean, Niger is geographically closer to like the, you know, slave coast or whatever, but still historically not. And the music it's more like modern music with electric guitars, kind of like blues electric guitar, but it sounded extremely similar to this style of music that's less well known from North Mississippi called hill country blues, which is like, I mean, the Delta blues style is kind of like everybody knows that's become the source for the blues styles that most people know, and then rock and roll and everything. So that everybody knows this early Delta blues stuff, but not a whole lot of people, except for people from the region or real blues aficionados, know this like other North Mississippi hill country blues style, which is very different, and it's just unique. It's not like a very well-known music, and it's really played in a really small area in Mississippi. And then I heard this music out of Niger that sounded like almost identical to it. But also the music from Niger is not well known. It's like even the record label that it's on is an obscure label, and it's like just some guy's recording that he made in some club, like somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the desert, you know. And so I think that the probability that any of those that the musicians from Mississippi were listening to those guys from Niger or vice versa is like almost zero. you know, uh, but the music sounded like so incredibly similar. So that's what I've been thinking about lately, like listening. Like I listened to something else a while ago. I played it for you while you're visiting me, but it was some vocal music from uh, the Albanians of Macedonia. It sounds
Yeah.
like country music. It sounded like it could be from Tennessee.
Like how exactly does it sound like Tennessee music to you?
Oh, well, maybe I can, if I can find the record fast enough, I can play it too. It's like the vocal inflections. I think that there's like that particularly like rather female way of singing, kind of more traditional Nashville country music, where they have that bending ring, ring, ring thing. I
Kind
mean,
of
it's
a
hard.
twang.
Yeah, yeah. If I played it, a record, I think it's really obvious. But again, I can't imagine that there's the slightest. Oh God, now I have to find the record. But I can't imagine that there's the slightest really direct, historical link between the two music scenes. Close to impossible. Oh wait, here it is. I found it. This is from this French record label that I like a lot, Okora. I guess it's an imprint of Radio France. But actually, I found a really good. The thing is with like a lot of this kind of music, in order to kind of find it, it's good to know which record labels you like, because the whole genre that people, I mean, it's a phrase I never use, but the genre that people call world music, I hate that phrase, but like, um, uh, so much of the time, I think it's the opposite. It's more like some record producer's idea of just taking some superficial aspect of some folk music from some non-Western country and then superimposing it with like pop music stylings or something. So you have to find the record labels that are not into that. And this French record label, Okora, has a lot of great recordings. And I found that on Spotify, there's a search you can do. You can do a label search. So if you type label colon and then no space, and then you type the name of a record label, then it'll actually do a search for the record label, and then you can put a space and then type in the search word. You know what I mean? So like, I know that this is a good label. So if I want to find, like, if I want to say, oh, like, what do they have from like Iran? I type label Kora space Iran, and then I get their stuff. But then of course you have to know, their name. The names of the records are in French, so I guess sometimes you have to type in the French name of a country. But to find this track of, which one are you talking about that you heard? That Bulgarian thing?
All I know is it's like, yeah, the 3-part female harmony. So haunting. One night I just listened to it on repeat and cried.
Oh no way! I think that's that Bulgarian one. See if I can find it. Wow, I'll have to cue it up at some point. Yeah, you're talking about
I
that
could
Bulgarian
find
too.
it. Let's see. It is, Trio Bulgarka.
Yeah.
Strati
Strati,
Angelos.
yeah.
Is that the one that you said sounds like the Nashville country?
No, but I love that music. I think maybe I got it wrong. No, that's not it. Oh, that. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of shape note singing.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah, I haven't listened to that stuff in a long time. Have you sung that stuff?
Not really. They used to have like a monthly event in Austin, but it was always during a time when I was teaching.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna try that sometime. I was thinking about something else that reminded me of shape note singing. Forgot what. Yeah.
I do like looking at this like these unexplainable similarities in the music of different cultures because it's like the way I kind of look at it is like if we see like some massive aspect of music as being like an expression of something that's in us, you know, just like multiple languages will have like their own word for the same emotion or the same feeling or the same life experience. It's like it makes sense that music would kind of find these similar expressions, like there's
Yeah,
some sort of shared human emotion going on.
yeah, sure. I mean, I would think about it like an archetype, you know.
Go for it. How so?
Oh, well, more as a form. I mean, I guess I haven't thought about it as much as an emotion, but as a kind of a form, you know, or yeah, like more. I don't know. I think of it more as a texture of the music or something like that, you know. I mean, in the same
Especially,
way, like I mean, the archetype, like a conventional kind of Jungian archetype would also often be expressed as like a form or a figure, you know. So like the figure might be the archetype, uh, uh, more than the feeling that it evokes. I mean, of course, they're like really related, you know.
like the musical figure.
No, I mean more like archetypal figures. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't go into that too much. I can't like expound on it. I'm not an expert on it.
I was thinking more like as kind of more specifically to vocal music. I wouldn't know quite how it would translate as much rhythmically or into instrumental music, but like there's this phenomenon in the voice called sympathetic movements where when you hear someone orating or singing or whatever, your body kind of like moves into a similar position and like it can kind of explain how we can feel empathy or how we can kind of have an intuition about the emotions that someone has like under what they're saying. And even like during grad school I did this paper where I noticed that like um, they had more recently done scientific research on inflection and how certain types of inflection match up with certain emotions. And then I was able to kind of analyze a Mozart opera. Like I analyzed this character from a Mozart opera, and like the science like was applicable to like the melodies that Mozart wrote in this character and where the character was emotionally at the time.
Hmm.
So like I'm having this sense now that there are just like shared emotions that are kind of like our body just goes to a similar position and expresses in a similar way when we
Hmm.
feel a certain thing.
Yeah, yeah. It makes more sense that you would say that as a singer. I'm always telling my guitar students constantly that like that you know I always say like, oh, like whatever's going on in your eardrum with the music, this is just some tiny little point that's being tickled. That's like the small part, you know. I'm always trying to emphasize to them that it's bodily, you know, like how much the you know I'm trying to work with them to get their experience of music to be bodily, you know, uh, um, corporeal, you know. But you know, I mean, as a singer, that's of course automatic, you know, because the sounds are being produced internally. Although I guess you work on it anyway, right? Because kind of an amateur is singing just kind of with a little wiggle right here, and then you like work on stretching that out into your whole body, you know. But I started having that experience when I bought this acoustic guitar, which I don't have anymore, but which was like really resonant, like just had a really great resonance. And then like the guitar itself, you know, when you play an acoustic guitar, is pressed up against the chest bone. And then like I began to, like as a practice, just sing along to the notes I was playing, um, but with the resonance of the instrument and the direct contact with the instrument on the breastplate, then like yeah, then it forced this resonance, this internal resonance, and I always, which like drove my singing, you know, and it caused my singing to become much more intonated because like as long as the guitar's in tune, it like, you know, the resonance forces you to sing in tune, like physically pushes you in tune where you can't really be out of tune without a conflict. And I always said, you know, I always said that guitar taught me to sing that way, but from the inside, like from kind of like pushing through the chest, you know. Unfortunately, I fell on the fucking thing and broke it. Oh well.
That makes me think of this thing like that I tell a lot of like singers who they hate the way their voice sounds recorded, and I tell them about how actually the eardrum, right, is like connected to bone, and all of our bones are connected to each other. And like a not insignificant part of how we hear ourselves is that we hear our own voice. Oh, and our vocal cords are connected to bone as well. And we're hearing our own voice resonating through our entire bone structure. And a recording can't get that unless it's like pressed up against a bone. I don't know if you've ever like hit a tuning fork and put it up against your tooth.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
And you hear it through your whole body.
Yeah, your skull vibrates. It's nuts.
Yeah, and so it's like what I tell people is like there's other reasons too, but I say like the voice that you hear inside your head is true, and the voice that you hear on a recording is true. It's like some of the sounds just only live inside your head, inside your body, and some of the sounds get out. And one of the things we work on is like how to get more of the good sounds out so that other people get to hear them.
Damn, that's fascinating. That explains it. I always thought it was like perceptual. Like it was a kind of, you know, what do they call that when people have, you know, anorexia or something? That
body dysmorphia.
I always thought it was like that, just a real, like more of a psychological, like auditory dysmorphia or something like that.
I imagine some of that happens as well, but like a big part of it is, I mean, one thing I have people do is just like catch their voice in their hand and scoop it back in their ear, so they get a more accurate sense of like what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And then we talk about this concept called placement. So like the sound that comes out of your vocal cords is like the sound that comes out of a record player that's not plugged into speakers, right? It's not very loud. But then like think about like there's bones on the roof of your mouth, right? Your hard palate. And wherever your voice kind of hits first and how it resonates through your mouth, through your sinus cavities, even through your chest, how in your throat, like how spacious your throat is, the positioning of your tongue, like there's this whole acoustical structure going on inside your body that has a massive impact on what happens to the sound coming out of your vocal cords, and then how much of that is getting projected this side of your lips versus how much is actually kind of resonating back inside directly toward your eardrums, so that you're hearing it yourself instead of it getting outside.
It's a wild ride. But to go back to something you said a minute ago, it's fascinating because it reminds me of something I've been thinking. It's something I've been thinking of really for many years, and I don't think I've ever said it to anybody. But at some point, it occurred to me like the kind of like emotional empathy that comes from listening to music. At some point, it struck me. I think that if I have a real emotional connection when I hear music as a listener, I think maybe I'm like, as I'm hearing another person sing, I somehow imagine like not really not like actively imagine, but kind of sort of somehow imagine how I would feel if I was singing that, you know. And I don't really mean that like not in this really obvious way, like, wow, that person is singing a sad song, so I guess if I sang that, I would be sad. Like not this superficial shit. Like really on the strictly sound level. Like, how would it feel? How would it feel if that sound was being produced in my, you know, lungs and vocal cords and mouth? Like, and I mean, because I started thinking how like, you know, well, first I was thinking how it is just to sing along to a, you know, like a record I like, you know, with singing in it, like where I just sing along with the singing. And I think like, and then it's like I begin, you know, if it's something I really like and I'm singing along with it, it's like, you know, I don't know how it sounds to anybody else, but for me, it's like I feel like unified with it, you know. And if I'm singing along with Stevie Wonder, it's like I sort of feel like I'm singing as Stevie Wonder, you know, for a second. But then it, you know, and then I started thinking about that in terms of other instruments too. I thought, well, like it's probably also true if I listen to a saxophone solo. Like I can't really sing and produce the sound of a saxophone, but like I still think I might sort of be having that experience of like of not so much imagining, but like psychically like putting myself into the shoes of the saxophone, or something like that. Like yeah, yeah. It's like this weird like as if experience or something. Not so much like person A is like sending beams of feeling X to me, you know, but more like I am like psychically putting myself in the position of them, you know.
Yeah, it's not unreasonable. I mean, saxophone is an interesting example because the vibration of the reed, right? That's similar to the vibration of the vocal cords,
Yeah.
right? And the movement of the air. And then there is a human like putting emotion into that experience, right? So it's you don't just look at a saxophone that's just sitting there not being played and like feel an emotional resonance with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the tricky things to me about being a guitar player is that the guitar does not really sound like that. It doesn't sound like a voice, you know? And which is why it's so fun to play with like a lot of, you know, with a loud amplifier and get lots of feedback because then it begins to like get into that
Yep.
sustained vocal thing, you know?
It's like I do find it way, way, way different when I teach instruments from when I teach voice. Like, because when I teach instruments, there is this emotional disconnect that people can find a lot of safety in. Like, if something goes wrong, you can blame the instrument, you can blame like whatever. But like when something goes wrong with singing, it's like it's only me. It's only me, and my instrument is my body, and like it's all me. And it can be a like really emotionally challenging experience for people.
Yeah.
And I find
Yeah.
that as a teacher, if I'm not willing to go there to into that emotional experience, like we're really limited in how much work we're able to do on the singing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of the work I think that my last teacher did with me. With she never stated it explicitly, but I think she really was. She had the talent of. She just had that talent in her personality that I could play something in front of her without that awkward sense of being uh, like on trial or something, you know. Or like as my, you know, the other guys like to say about her, she had big ears, you know.
Mm.
And it was like, and she had like the greatest way of doing it. She never really stated this stuff to me explicitly, but like I would come in. I mean, she's a genius. She passed away last year, actually. She
Oh.
was a genius. Anyway, like I would come in and she would say like, so like, do you feel like playing a bit, you know? And this is all improvisation, you know. And of course, you know, I would, you know, I would play something, and of course, all the time I was thinking like, well, like, you know, how is she judging it, or like, you know, like what is she thinking about my technique and that, the normal stuff. anyway, but then I would play, and then she would just be like listening, and then when I would get done playing, she wouldn't say anything for a minute. Like she like didn't move, and then she would say, uh, you know, "So how was that?" You know, like she asked me, like, "How was that?" You know, yeah. And it really opened up this space, you know, where like it changed the parameters of the relationship, you know, where it put me in that feeling of like it's okay, like I can play, you know, like I can just play, you know what I mean? Like, and I mean, I translate that now to my own students in a different way. I mean, I don't have any students that are really like far enough along as musicians that they're like doing these kind of improvisations, you know, but but even with the beginners, I'm always asking them. I tell them like how deep is your breathing right now? I mean, they're playing a guitar, you know, but then I say like check, ask yourself, have you taken a deep breath in the last moment? You know, like how does your shoulders feel? How does your back feel? I tell my students sometimes, I say my only goal is actually like that your back is relaxed, you know, that your back feels good and your shoulders feel good, you know.
Do you ever find like I have a similar thing, but I find that like a lot of times my students like have a predetermined like idea of how like what the rubric is for how I'm judging them, and it doesn't matter what I say, like they just superimpose it on me and like experience anything that I'm saying as though like, oh, that's surely like she thinks I suck a lot more, or the standards are a lot higher than what she's saying.
Yeah, people are doing that in all of their relationships, you know, and encounters. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. You know, I was really lucky in my first, well, I say like my first semester in music school as if I had that many. I mean, I think I finished 2 semesters. I'm always saying that. In my first year in music school, my first and only year, uh, but I was in this like beginner, like freshman level jazz guitar class, you know. But of course, the guy teaching the class is like the head of the department, you know. So of course, we were all a bit in awe of him for whatever reason, because we were supposed to be. But like, he would give us these assignments of some stuff we had to learn, and then we would like come into the class and like we're supposed to, you know, play it. And then like we would all do the same thing, and I did it too. Like we would be playing like do better, and every time we hit somebody would hit a wrong note, they would say sorry, sorry. And then at some point, everybody would do it. I did it, and then at some point he stopped. He would say like, "Stop saying sorry." Do you know how ridiculous that is to say sorry when you're like in the middle of playing music? You know, like yeah, it's really stupid, isn't it? Like ridiculous. Sorry, sorry, it's dumb. But you know, I tell that to my students now too. I say like, sorry is verboten. Like you know.
That reminds me of this girl I went to grad school with who apparently during this one aria it was like there was this one part that was super challenging, and when she would practice it, every time she would mess it up she would just go shit, and then she would just keep practicing, and she didn't realize that she ended up practicing in the word shit because she said it every time, and she mindlessly during her actual master's recital sang, yelled shit, kept singing, and didn't realize she'd done it.
No way.
Well, you figure like we practice, right? Like we practice so that the stuff becomes somewhat mindless.
Yeah.
And whatever it is you do, like with enough repetition, that's the thing you've practiced.
Wow. I'll be damned. It's good. They must have thought she had some dressing or something. It's been very confusing for the piano. Yeah. I don't think I've ever practiced enough to develop that problem. Yeah.
Well,
So what other hot topics do you have on the docket?
I actually, for me, I think for today, I think this was like super awesome. Um, like more than enough for me to work with, and I think that like I actually think that like the I think that the gold here is like is a lot of just you and me riffing because
Yeah.
it's like we've got that like sibling rapport, and then we're both like educated, skilled musicians and music teachers, but we like our educations and our experiences are from like very different angles. You have so much more performance experience than I do, and I have so much more like formal education. Um, and
I might have more performance experience in hours on stage, but not necessarily in the type of performance, you know? I've never
right,
done these kind of like, I don't know, the kind of the type of performances that you've done.
yeah, and I really haven't done very much of the type of performances you've done.
Yeah.
Not since like high school. But yeah, it's like there's stuff where like I couldn't give word one of advice on like what it feels like to go on tour, stuff like that. And you would have like tons of advice on that.
Yeah, you gotta put this in the edit. When I like completely am obsessed with that band, the Dirty Projectives. And when we went on our first tour, they had kind of taken off and been doing lots and lots of touring. And it was in the very beginning of our first tour, and it was like a 3 month tour. We were going to go to Europe, and we were just getting started in the first few days. And we were in Baltimore, and one of the girls from that band, I guess she had moved to Baltimore, and her and her boyfriend came to the show, and then I said like, oh Angel, like we're just getting started, like you've done so much touring, like what is your advice? And she just said, never pass up any opportunity to take a shower. And then I realized how I had met her. I was in Denver, Colorado, and they played there, and they needed a place to stay. And I sort of, as a bad house guest, like invited them over to stay in like the house where I was already crashing as a guest. But like when they first showed up, like before she really even like said hello or anything, like the first thing she asked was like if she could take a shower. She promptly did. So that's all I know about touring. Never pass up an opportunity to take a shower.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I
Cool.
have a student pretty soon, but this was awesome. This was fun.
Yeah. For me too. Yeah. I learned a lot as well. For sure. I mean that.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. All right.
All right, love you, man.
Love you too. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.